Welcome to Downtown Sports. My name is Downtown Stephen Brown, and in today's video, guys, I want to have a conversation about the Maple Leafs and their goaltending situation in the now when it comes time to the playoffs, and even for next year as well. Starting with what the goalie situation looks like right now, it's been Ilya Samsonov and Matt Murray over the last couple of weeks, but after Murray left Sunday's game, after it looked like he either hit his head off of the ice or at the very least snapped his neck back quite violently, we don't really know the extent of that injury, but if there is an update on Tuesday, I will leave a pinned comment in the comment section below. And for a guy who had his season ended just last year with a concussion, even if the news that we may get on Tuesday today, even if that is positive, they more than likely end up playing it safe. But with 2 weeks before the playoffs start, that's kind of tough, right? He more than likely doesn't start in game one, even if he is healthy and ready to go. I think that's going to be Ilya Samsonov. I think it's been Samsonov's net game one for a while now. But you still want to have Matt Murray as an option if you needed to turn to him. Goal save above expected isn't a perfect stat, but what it tries to do is it tries to look at the quantity of scoring opportunities that a goalie faces while in the net, and then relative to how dangerous those scoring opportunities are, it tries to say how many goals has that goalie prevented from going in or allowed, because you could be a minus. And when it comes to Samsonov, he's eighth best in the entire NHL at 5-on-5 so far this year. And the most impressive thing about Samsonov being eighth in this stat category is that it's a counting stat. So the more games that you play and the more scoring opportunities that you face, the more opportunities that you're going to have to be able to contribute to it. And what I mean by that is if you're a guy like Ilya Sorokin, who leads the NHL in this stat category, he plays for an Islanders team that has allowed the 11th most scoring opportunities against at 5-on-5 so far this year. So he sees a lot of scoring opportunities and he also stops all of them. But if you're Samsonov playing for a team like the Leafs, who have allowed the 13th fewest amount of scoring opportunities at 5-on-5, he doesn't face as many, but when he does, he's also stopping a lot of them. I know I haven't uploaded a whole ton on this channel in the last 2 or 3 months, but I do have a full-time gig working for TSN. I produce content for SportsCenter, and that's hockey. And in and around the trade deadline, we were pushing out a lot of content and asking the question almost daily: should the Maple Leafs go out and acquire a third goaltender? And the names that were being tossed around were Jonathan Quick or Cam Talbot or James Reimer. And if the salary cap didn't exist, yeah, sure, go out and get one of those guys. But the salary cap does exist. And after trading for Ryan O'Reilly already, if the Maple Leafs would have gone out and gotten one of those guys, they wouldn't have been able to have afforded to have then gone out and gotten Jake McCabe. And there's no way I'm taking one of those guys over Jake McCabe on this team right now, especially when you got a guy like Joseph Woll, who was an American Hockey League All-Star this season and has a .927 save percentage in 21 games for the Marlies so far this year. And it is kind of unfortunate that he's only played 4 games this year and 8 games for the Maple Leafs in his career, because I feel like if we would have gotten to have seen a larger sample size from him, we'd feel a lot more confident and we wouldn't have spent any time asking that question on our shows on a daily basis. Looking ahead to next season, though, the Maple Leafs have Matt Murray under contract for one more season at $4.6 million, and Ilya Samsonov's a 26-year-old restricted free agent, but I can't imagine why they wouldn't re-sign him. I mean, like we said earlier, he's been excellent so far this year, and if we scroll down a little bit further down on the list, they also have Joseph Woll signed for 2 more seasons at just over league minimum. And I don't mean to pile on a guy after he left Sunday's game with an injury. I mean, I have nothing against Matt Murray, but seeing that $4.6 million number for another season, um, that's tough for a guy who's been very, very mediocre and also not really available because he's been injured now 3 times so far this season. And when I say he's been average, he's been average. He's got a .903 save percentage in 26 games so far this year, and the NHL league average save percentage from this season is .904. And this is also what I meant when I said it was unfortunate that Joseph Woll's only gotten an opportunity to play just 4 games this year, because, if he wasn't hurt to start the year and he plays those 14 games that Eric Kallgren got into, well, maybe you're looking at a larger sample size of around 15 to 20 games or so, And I'm not expecting the 934 that he's got in the 4 games so far this year. But if he posts like a 910 or a 915 or something like that, you could feel good about maybe moving on from Matt Murray this summer. I think they may do that anyway, but the difficult part then becomes, yeah, it's just a $4.6 million cap hit, but he's owed $8 million in real cash next season. And yeah, the Senators are holding on to 25% of that, but that means that the Leafs or the team that you would be trading him to is on the hook for $6 million. It's not like it's a $4.6 million cap hit and he's only owed a million or two because the contract was front loaded. Now this is a backloaded deal. And this is part of the reason why I was so upset when the Maple Leafs first made this trade, and it had nothing to do with Matt Murray the person or even Matt Murray the goalie and his abilities. It's just the financials didn't make sense then, and they still don't make sense now. When the Ottawa Senators traded Matt Murray to the Maple Leafs, Murray was owed another $15 million on his contract over this year and next season. If the Senators would have bought him out, they would have saved 5 of that $15 million. So they would have been on the hook for $10 million, just lit on fire, basically. But with the Maple Leafs stepping in and them only retaining 25%, the Senators save $11.25 million of the 15 that he's owed. That's over $6 million more compared to if they would have bought him out. So the Maple Leafs gave the Senators $6 million in cash for Matt Murray, and all they got back was a third and a seventh round pick. It just doesn't make any sense. The Senators used that money to go out and sign Claude Giroux or trade for Jacob Chikrin or possibly extend Alex DeBrincat. I know the Senators didn't make the playoffs this year, but it's going to happen eventually. The only good thing about the Matt Murray contract is that it will not be on the books when the Maple Leafs need to re-sign both Austin Matthews, William Nylander, or Mitch Marner the year afterwards. And I think that was by design. Because if you're looking at the list of goalies who signed just 1 or 2 year contracts from this past summer, there's not really a whole lot of names here that would inspire as much or more confidence than what I had in Matt Murray at the beginning of this season. And I think in the case of Matt Murray, they were probably hoping he could have given them about 40 games or so this season. And that's why I don't necessarily consider Yaroslav Halak or even Craig Anderson as options for them that would have made sense. Because at 41 and 37 years old, they weren't playing 40 games for you. The only guy on that list that would have made any sense that you could have hoped for 40 games out of realistically was Marc-Andre Fleury. And the Leafs had legitimate interest in him at last year's deadline and in free agency as well. He just decided to stay with the Minnesota Wild. Then you start getting into the names of guys who were traded this past summer, and maybe Aiden Hill could have been an interesting option, had some decent years with a not so great Arizona Coyotes team, maybe Cam Talbot as well, but it sounds like he was only available from Minnesota if you were also giving them a goalie back in return. Maybe Ville Husso could have been interesting, but then again, hadn't played a lot of games to that point in his career, didn't really fare so well in the playoffs last year for the Blues. Maybe Alexander Georgiev, but then again, he was coming off of a season where he had a save percentage under 900. Maybe, you go out and get both former Capitals goalies and you pick up Vitek Vanacek, but the problem with Vanacek, Georgiev, and even Husso is those guys all wanted 3-year deals, and they got them. But hey, maybe Kyle Dubas looked at Matt Murray and saw a guy that could maybe give him 30 or 40 games and be league average or maybe even a bit better than that. And if he couldn't, then maybe you look to move on from him like they more than likely will. And if that was the case, if it was a situation where it gone off the rails and he was bad and he was injured, well, they would only have the Peter Mrazek situation to draw comparables from, where Peter Mrazek had 2 years left on his deal instead of just 1, and all it cost Kyle Dubas to move him was 13 spots in the draft. And in the case of Matt Murray, the Leafs got a third and a seventh round pick to take him on. They got 25 games or so of league average goaltending, and if it costs you 13 spots in the draft to get rid of him, which is probably about the equivalent of a third and a seventh, then you got 25 games or so of league average goaltending for nothing. And I guess you can't really argue with that, but at the same time, I could have done without I could have done without the drama that comes with him being injured 3 different times this year. If you're then wondering what the salary cap situation could look like for next year, well, if the cap goes up by $1 million and then you look to sign Ilya Samsonov to about a market value deal, which is anywhere between what Georgiev and Vanacek signed for last year to what Husso signed for with the Detroit Red Wings, so anywhere between $3.5 and $4.75 million on a 3-year deal. They could have $16.5 million to work with, and guys like Bobby McMahon and Matthew Nyes and Nick Robertson who could play a factor lower in their lineup. You could realistically have enough money to maybe look to keep a Ryan O'Reilly or a Michael Bunting, depending on how these playoffs go. Maybe you'll look to add another top 4 defenseman into this group. I don't know. The point is that they'd have a lot of options. But that's going to be it for the video, guys. So make sure to like it if you did like it, and subscribe for more because more is always on the way. And make sure to let me know what your thoughts and opinions are down in the comments section below. What do you make of the Maple Leafs goaltending situation as we head into the playoffs, and what it could potentially look like next season as well? Are you happy with Samsonov being the game 1 starter? I mean, any matchup that you have with your goaltending when Andrei Vasilevsky is on the other side is going to be a tough one, but I don't know. I think Samsonov can hold his own. I guess we're going to have to see.